All right, last offseason, it was biggest draft bust in Steelers history. If you haven't seen that video, I recommend it. But I enjoyed making it, so we're back here in the 2025 offseason with the worst free agent signings in Steelers history. What's up, guys? It's Riverside, and here we are once again. We meet. It's been a while since I did an IRL video, and before we get into it, I want to thank everyone for the support, man. Justin Fields highlight video, 100K views. First video on this channel to ever hit 100K. That's awesome. Thank you guys for the support. Wouldn't be where I'm at right now without you guys. But let's get into it. And we'll start off with number 5, and that's Mitchell Trubisky. I don't think Mitchell Trubisky had in mind that when he signed that 2-year deal with the Steelers, that he would only start 7 games in those 2 years. He was going to be that bridge QB after Big Ben retired, but then the Steelers went out and drafted Kenny Pickett, and they also brought back Mason Rudolph, so there was some competition there for Trubisky to deal with. He did win the battle, though. He was named the Week 1 starter, but just 4 games into the season, and really 3.5 games because he was benched at halftime of the 4th game against the New York Jets, a game that Kenny Pickett came into and threw 3 interceptions, which I probably mentioned in the Draft Bust video, to be honest. Shameless plug again. You guys can go watch that. But anyways, Trubisky sees some time in and out of the lineup the rest of 2022. 2023, Trubisky is just Pickett's backup because for some reason the Steelers are convinced that Kenny Pickett is the guy. Trubisky is given an opportunity Week 14 against New England. They lose to the Patriots, one of the worst teams in the league at the time. And the week before that as well, they lost to the Arizona Cardinals, another one of the worst teams in the league at the time, a game where Mitch had to come in and play the second half. So Mitch didn't really show anything in either of those games. So then he starts the week after that against the Indianapolis Colts. We get destroyed that day. He gets benched for Mason Rudolph, who goes undefeated as a starter. And, I mean, that kind of set the tone for what was going to follow that offseason, that they were going to at the very least, get rid of Mitchell Trubisky. And they did indeed do that. And then they brought in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So that is the life of Mitchell Trubisky as a Steeler, and that's what gets him at number 5 on this list. Number 4 wasn't even here as long as Trubisky. In fact, this guy only lasted 11 games, as we'll get into later. It's LeGarratte Blount, 2014 LeGarratte Blount. They signed him to be a complement to Le'Veon Bell in the backfield. He has a fantastic Week 3, LeGarratte does. 118 yards and a touchdown on just 10 carries. Looks like he's going to be the guy, possibly, and looked like he could be reliable if Le'Veon is out of the lineup or whatever. But then in Week 11 versus the Tennessee Titans, LeGarratte doesn't have any carries. So what does he decide to do? He just decides to leave the field. Because what else would you do when you're upset with your team? Instead of act like a professional, he just decided to walk off the field early before the game was over. The very next day, the Steelers released him, and they questioned his lack of commitment to the team. So his final tally with the Steelers: played 11 games, had 2 touchdowns, 266 rushing yards, left the field early, and soon after won a Super Bowl with the New England Patriots in the same season. Wow. All the kids out there, let that be a lesson. If you're not getting something, cry about it, and you'll get it. But moving on now to number 3, we have, this one kind of dates us a little bit. At least it dates me as a fan because I was born in 2005. I know that makes some people feel old out there, but this guy played in 2000. It's Kent Graham. Kent Graham was a quarterback. He signed in 2000 to give Cordell Stewart someone to push him, and it was kind of a battle. Kent Graham wins the QB battle going into the season, and he starts the first 3 games of the year. The Steelers in those games go 0-3, so the Steelers decide to bench Kent Graham for Cordell Stewart. Stewart gets back in there, but then at one point Kent Graham comes back into the lineup, actually gets 2 wins, 22-0 and 15-0. But listen to the stat line that he had in the one win. 3 for 12 for 46 yards. That won them the game. And then eventually Kent Graham returned back to the bench, and by the end of the season, Cordell Stewart kind of established himself as the starter, where Graham was released in the offseason. And then the next year, Cordell Stewart became a Pro Bowler. So the final tally on Kent Graham there, 2-3 as a starter. That doesn't look too atrocious. But when you dig deeper, you find that in 5 games, he threw 1 touchdown and had a 44.6 completion percentage. And yes, that is a real quote from my dad. So Kent Graham just wasn't the solution. And he wasn't even a part-time solution. But moving on to number 2, we take a look at a guy that I honestly kind of forgot about in recent Steelers history, and that's Ladarius Green. 4-year deal to the Steelers. He lasted 1 year. 1 year. This was right after Heath Miller retired, so the Steelers, they're looking for a playmaker at tight end. Ladarius Green is who they land on. He unfortunately misses his first 9 games due to some ankle injuries and some concussions, which seem to be a common theme. He actually has a really good game against the New York Giants, 110 yards and a touchdown. But then 2 weeks later, the concussions are back. He misses the rest of the season and gets released in the offseason. Final tally as a Steeler, 6 games. He signed a 4-year contract and played 6 whole games, scored 1 touchdown. Ladarius Green just couldn't stay healthy, man. It's a shame. That leads us to number 1, where I have the man with the worst hands that I've ever seen, Donte Moncrief. This was who they got to replace Antonio Brown, and this guy didn't even last half a season. Maybe it would have been different if Big Ben was in there, but in the game that Big Ben was healthy for, Moncrief dropped the ball 5 times, and that's not even an exaggeration. So after that, Donte Moncrief struggles again the following week when Mason Rudolph comes in. Moncrief is then benched and eventually cut, so a 2-year deal over in half a year. The final tally on Moncrief, 5 games, 4 catches, 18 yards, a lot of drops. What a disappointment, and that's what puts him at number 1. Hope you guys enjoyed this edition of me just going ham on the Steelers. Stay tuned for more content. I want to make more like this. I know I'm trying to shy away from the highlight videos and go to some sports talk. See if I can, to be quite frank, see if I can get monetized again. Come on, YouTube, get me up there. But yeah, that'll do it for today's video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.